Hi everybody, and welcome to the next in my little YouTube video series, which has now popularly become known as the Mythbuster, the Boerboel Mythbuster series. Now this is video number 3 in the series. In the first video I addressed 2 myths where the name of the Boerboel comes from, and secondly the whole Jan van Riebeeck dog issue, the bull and baiter thing. Now we busted both those myths. In the second video we looked at a different myth, and we were looking at the 1820 British settlers. Now both of these stories, or all 3 of these myths, actually have their origins in the book of Mr. Bert Grabe, the Boerboel of Southern Africa, which was written in 1995 and which was a great piece of work by Mr. Bert Grabe. Mr. Bert Grabe by profession was a carpenter, but he was a well-read carpenter. He was a guy that liked reading up on things and doing things well. And he was the first person to ever try to do anything. So, with all respect to Mr. Grabe, he did a great job. Now, Mr. Grabe also gave me some of his documents during my last interview with him, which was also on my YouTube channel. And by the way, please subscribe to the channel, because then you will be notified if there are any new videos coming out. Now, in this envelope which Mr. Grabe gave me, and in his handwriting on the outside, I found a document which reflects the first page of the handbook of Mr. Grabe, the one that we've been referring to. It's obviously a photocopy of the first page of the book, but then it changes over to a document that I had a long battle placing, and it's a document on the history of the Boerboel. And I really tried to find out, where does this go in, because obviously it looks as if it was written by Mr. Grabe. At the end of the document, it simply says, brings a couple of sources in. And now these sources are very interesting. It says that all the research that was done, all the research in this whole assumption, this myth number 4 that we're going to look at, comes from the Bible, the handbook of the Bible, the Lux Verbi, a book called The Mastiff by Marie Antoinette Moore, a book called The Mastiff in Ancient Times by Edmund G. Oliver, and The Boerboel of Southern Africa by Bertus Grabe. Right, okay. So I think this was written by Mr. Grabe as well. And then for a long time I battled to find it, and then I found it. People doesn't know it. Nobody really knows it, and it's not advertised very much. But in 2001, the SABT already had a very comprehensive breeders course, right? And suddenly we find the same article, the history of the Boerboel, in this same breeders course. Now, this breeders course included very interesting information on breeding, man, this is the stuff that breeders nowadays should also know, and know well. It was a well put together book, but it disappeared in time, and suddenly everybody is allowed to breed and just continue to produce whatever they think should be a Boerboel. Right, so let's go into what Mr. Grabe claims here as myth number 4. Now, this takes a wild swig at where the Boerboels came from. Remember, somehow they had to explain how this dog with a very specific appearance ended up in South Africa. But they never say it's only South Africa, right? That claim is never made. That they were South Africans that were claiming that this dog was like national inheritance. But they never claimed that. They never claimed that this is a truly South African dog. They said it had its origins in South Africa. But they never explained how there were dogs in Namibia. Why were there dogs in Namibia? Why there are dogs in Angola? There were definitely Boerboels in Angola, and there's lots of records about it. And in Mozambique, and all over the southern tip of the continent, the subcontinent. Where do they come from? Now this was an attempt to explain it. And Mr. Grabe says that in the 7th century before Christ, there were kings of Assyria that used huge dogs to hunt horses and lions. And he really tries to pull back the history of the Boerboel to the 7th century before Christ. And he tries to explain that these huge dogs must have ended up in Africa. Now, you know, the whole war dog concept was settled here, talking about Alexander the Great, the king of Albania, and it was interesting how this very nice tale about massive dogs was then used as a source for the origins of the Boerboel. But there's no link between the dogs of 7 centuries before Christ and the dogs in southern Africa. If there was any link, it had to have been with a human migration down Africa, right? The paleontologists tell us now that the humans actually originated in Africa, then moved northwards, moved into Europe, and then for some other reason flowed down Africa again. What happened to the ones who were in Africa when these ones left, I don't know. But they sort of flowed down and came down again. And all along these routes they could make archeological digs and carbon date everything that they found. And then from that they could say when they were in which region and how they moved and this and that. But the very interesting fact is that they never found a single skull of a wide-mouthed mastiff in any one of these digs. So, if the dogs from the 7th century before Christ, or the king of Assyria, etc., was the source of the Boerboel, how the hell did they come here if they didn't migrate? If there are no skeletal remains of them or their presence? Somehow they must have arrived here. They're not indigenous to Africa, but this is a hell of a long shot. And very interesting, actually in the same article, and I think people don't read very well, that Mr. Grabe as well actually questions the whole theory that he had in his first book about the Bullenbeiter. Right. He says that the European link with Jan van Riebeeck, with the Bullenbeiter, does not look anymore as the only or the biggest possibility as the source of the origin of the Boerboel. Especially not if we look back at the crossbreeds that we mentioned earlier. So, the origins of the Boerboel breed, according to the article which we assume was written by Mr. Grabe, the history of the Boerboel in his own book, and other sources, could have been two different sources that caused this breed to be here. The Bullenbeiter, with its roots in Europe, and earlier out of Albania and Assyria, and that's where this link is pulled in, or the African dog of the indigenous African tribes, which probably came from the Cynomones of Ethiopia. Now, people, we know that if you take a dog of mastiff origin, let's assume for one wild moment that the Bullenbeiter did arrive in Africa. We know it's not true. We know it was unloaded and not offloaded, and it's probably somebody got tired of it and chucked it overboard on the way, or it just simply died or got tired of eating salted meat, right? Now, if you take a dog with a mastiff origin and you crossbreed it with a dog that had its origin of the Cynomones of Ethiopia. Now that was a sighthound, a Spitz type sighthound, which somehow The ones that were found in the Cape when Jan van Riebeeck arrived there were very much smaller little dogs, ugly little dogs with curly tails and spitz faces. Now, if you take a dog of Mastiff appearance and you cross it with one of these, call it a Spitz type dog, you cross it with that, and you take that offspring and you cross it with a Spitz type dog again. You take that offspring and you cross it with a Spitz type dog again. You take that offspring and you cross it with a Spitz type dog again. What will you have? Will you have a Mastiff dog with a Boerboel appearance, or will you have a little Spitz dog, which occasionally, every once in a blue moon, chucks a puppy with a slightly wider mouth or something like that? Okay, right. I think that myth is properly busted. There had to be another source of the dogs. The dogs did not swim here. They did not swim to Southern Africa. They did not fall from heaven. They did not come with a human migration. We now know that. We also now know that the Bill and Baker story was very, very... it was a wild assumption. Right. So, that myth is properly busted. I'm going to make another video very soon. And that one is going to go about will be all about the dogs that was brought in by the De Beers company to guard their diamond mines. The so-called bull mastiffs that were imported. Now, I'd love to make that video because I found really, really good evidence about that one. Okay, so, but before we go on to the next video, I want to remind everybody, all this information and more, all this and more about the seafarers' routes, about the routes of the human migration, about all the digs in Africa, etc. All this information is in my book. If you would like to get the book, send an email to boerboelboek@gmail.com. Also, if you're watching this video, please, on the little YouTube bar, there's a little thingy that you can click and say, I like this. Please like my videos. It's just saying to me, I'm doing the right thing. Secondly, there's a subscribe button, and please subscribe to my videos as well. Because once you subscribe, you will know if there's any new video material coming out. You will be warned. They will receive a notice to say there's a new video, and you can decide if you want to watch it or not. I thank you, and have a nice day, and we'll see each other soon again.